My beloved soul, pause for a moment and listen carefully, because this message is not random. Something in the unseen realm aligned your steps with these words at this exact second. You may have been scrolling quietly, carrying questions you never spoke out loud, wondering why certain things in your life suddenly shifted. Why doors that once seemed open became strangely silent. Why opportunities that were almost within your reach slipped away without explanation. And deep inside, there was a quiet confusion you could never fully name. But heaven has not been confused. Heaven has been watching. There is something you must understand right now. Silence does not mean absence, and delay does not mean blindness. The moment you chose not to fight every accusation, the moment you chose restraint instead of retaliation, heaven began recording a story that is now approaching its turning point. You thought your quietness meant no one noticed. You believed that perhaps the truth would remain buried under rumors and misunderstandings. Yet the unseen court of heaven has never lost sight of a single detail of your story. Not the whispers. Not the manipulation. Not the quiet injustice that tried to distort your name. There were moments when you sensed something was wrong but could not prove it. People smiled in front of you while conversations behind closed doors painted a different picture. You noticed certain attitudes change without explanation. Invitations stopped coming. Opportunities that once felt natural suddenly became complicated. And in the middle of all this, you remained mostly silent. Not because you were weak, but because something deep inside your spirit told you that reacting too quickly would only feed the confusion surrounding you. What you did not know is that your silence was not wasted. It became the very evidence heaven would later use. Long ago, sacred wisdom declared something that many forget when they attempt hidden wrongdoing. In Ecclesiastes 3 verse 17, it is written that the Most High will bring judgment for every deed. Not some deeds. Not only public actions. Every deed. Every hidden decision made in the shadows eventually arrives at a moment of accountability. And while you were wondering whether justice even noticed your situation, another ancient warning was quietly echoing over those who tried to undermine you. Proverbs 26 verse 27 reveals a simple but powerful truth: whoever digs a pit will eventually fall into it. This is the part many people misunderstand about divine justice. It does not always rush. It does not always respond immediately. Sometimes heaven allows a situation to develop so that the truth reveals itself fully. What appeared like delay was actually preparation. What looked like silence was actually observation. And what felt like loss was quietly becoming the setup for a reversal you could not yet see. Because the unseen realm never forgot what happened when your name was twisted, when your intentions were questioned, and when your progress was quietly blocked. You may even remember nights when you wondered if you should finally defend yourself. Perhaps you considered exposing the situation or confronting those involved. But every time you felt ready to react, something held you back. A quiet restraint settled over your spirit, as if you were being guided to step aside instead of stepping forward. At the time it felt frustrating, even unfair. Yet now you are beginning to understand something deeper. Heaven sometimes asks you to remain still because a larger form of justice is already being arranged. And here is the revelation you were not expecting to hear today. The shifting you have been feeling around you recently is not random pressure. It is the sound of unseen doors moving. The quiet rearrangement of circumstances has already begun. Conversations are changing in places you cannot see. Realizations are forming in minds you cannot control. And truths that were once hidden beneath layers of misunderstanding are slowly rising toward the surface. But there is a reason this message arrived exactly now. Because a certain moment is approaching, a moment when the balance of the situation will begin to change. The same silence that once surrounded you will soon surround someone else. The same confusion that once followed your steps will begin to follow those who thought their actions would remain concealed. Something symbolic is beginning to move in the unseen realm. A door. Not an ordinary door, but a door connected to justice itself. And as that door begins to open, many people will assume it is opening to bless you, to reward you, to lift you into something new. But the truth is more complex than that. Because this door is not opening for the reason people expect. The door of justice is opening. And it's not opening for you. But the moment you understand who it is opening for, everything that has happened will suddenly make sense. My beloved soul, there is something deeper you must now understand about what happened around you. What you experienced was not simply a series of unfortunate circumstances. It was not random resistance or unexplained delay. Behind the quiet confusion that surrounded your path, there was intention. There was a plan forming in the shadows, shaped by someone who believed you would never discover what they were doing. While you were moving forward with sincerity, someone close enough to observe your journey began quietly arranging obstacles in your direction. This is why certain events felt strangely unnatural. Conversations changed tone without warning. People who once supported you began to behave differently, as if a subtle narrative had already reached their ears before you had the chance to speak. At first you questioned yourself. You wondered if perhaps you misunderstood something, or if the situation was simply part of life's unpredictable rhythm. But the truth is that what happened was not accidental. A hidden story was being written about you, and the author of that story believed they could keep their role concealed. The most painful part of betrayal is rarely the action itself. It is the realization that the person responsible once stood close enough to your trust to see your sincerity. This was not an enemy standing openly against you. This was someone who could smile in your presence, speak politely in public, and still carry a completely different intention in private conversations. They watched your progress carefully. They listened when you spoke about your hopes and plans. And instead of celebrating your steps forward, they quietly looked for ways to redirect the narrative surrounding your name. You may remember the moments when their behavior almost felt confusing. There were times they encouraged you, times they appeared supportive, times when their words seemed friendly. Yet something beneath the surface never felt completely steady. What you could not see then was that two different conversations were taking place. The one in front of you carried smiles and agreement. The one behind closed doors carried distortion and suggestion. A small comment here. A subtle implication there. Slowly, the image of you in other people's minds began to shift. But hidden actions always carry a dangerous assumption. Those who plan quietly often believe that secrecy will protect them forever. They assume that if something is spoken in the right place, among the right listeners, it will remain buried. They trust that the truth will never fully surface. Yet ancient wisdom has already addressed this illusion. In Numbers 32:23, a clear warning echoes across time: your sin will find you out. It does not say that exposure might happen. It declares that hidden wrongdoing eventually reveals itself. There is another ancient reflection that speaks even more directly to this moment. In Psalm 7 verses 15 to 16, it describes a person digging a pit for someone else, only to fall into the very trap they prepared. The trouble they caused returns upon their own head. This is the quiet principle of divine justice. What someone releases into the world eventually circles back toward its source. Lies may travel quickly, but truth has a way of arriving with a weight that cannot be ignored. And here is something that may surprise you: heaven did not begin paying attention when the damage appeared in your life. Heaven began paying attention the moment the first hidden intention formed in their heart. Before the first rumor was spoken. Before the first suggestion was planted in someone's mind. Before the first obstacle appeared in your path. The unseen realm was already recording the movement of every word and every motive. You wondered why you felt such a strange restraint whenever you considered confronting the situation directly. That restraint was not weakness. It was protection. Because if you had entered the conflict too early, you might have disrupted a process that was already unfolding beyond your view. Sometimes heaven allows a hidden plan to continue long enough for it to fully reveal the character behind it. The more someone believes they are getting away with something, the more clearly their intentions eventually expose themselves. And that is exactly what has begun happening now. There are movements taking place in conversations you cannot hear yet. Questions are beginning to form in the minds of people who once accepted the hidden narrative about you. Small inconsistencies are starting to surface. A detail that does not match. A story that shifts slightly each time it is repeated. Slowly, the structure of the false picture begins to crack. The same secrecy that once protected the plot is becoming the very weakness that exposes it. This is the moment when heaven's response quietly accelerates. Not always with thunder, not always with sudden confrontation, but with a sequence of events that slowly bring the truth closer to the surface. People begin to notice things they overlooked before. Situations begin to reveal their deeper context. The hidden architect of the problem starts realizing that control over the narrative is slipping away. They believed the truth would remain buried. They believed the story they created would eventually become the accepted version of events. But what they did not realize is that the process of exposure had already begun. And the most surprising part of this unfolding story is that the collapse of their plan will not begin with a dramatic announcement. It will begin quietly, almost invisibly, like the first crack forming beneath the surface of something that once seemed solid. Because the moment their carefully arranged plan begins to collapse is much closer than they realize. And when that moment finally arrives, even they will understand that the door of justice that is opening was never meant to protect them. My beloved soul, something is shifting now, and if you pay close attention to the atmosphere around your life, you can almost sense it. The same environment that once felt heavy with confusion is beginning to change in ways that are subtle but undeniable. At first the changes may seem small, almost invisible, like the quiet movement of wind before a storm clears the sky. Yet these small shifts carry a powerful meaning. What once worked against you has begun to turn in a different direction. For a long time, you believed you were standing alone in a situation you could not fully explain. The resistance felt constant. The misunderstandings seemed impossible to correct. And the silence surrounding your name made it appear as if the story written about you had already been accepted as truth. But what you could not see during those difficult moments was that a different conversation was forming beyond your reach. While one narrative tried to bury your reputation, another narrative was slowly rising, one shaped not by human opinion, but by the quiet movement of divine justice. You may already be noticing the early signs of this reversal. The same people who once seemed distant are beginning to reconsider what they heard. Questions are forming where certainty once existed. Someone who once repeated a rumor now pauses before speaking it again. Another person begins to notice details that were overlooked before. A small inconsistency in the story becomes harder to ignore. These moments may seem insignificant at first, but together they form the beginning of something powerful, the gradual return of truth. What is happening now is not coincidence. It is the beginning of a divine rearrangement. Situations that once felt locked in place are quietly being repositioned. Conversations that once moved in a single direction are starting to change course. The pressure that once surrounded you is slowly shifting away from you and toward the person who created the situation in the first place. What once seemed like their advantage is slowly becoming their exposure. There is a reason ancient wisdom reminds us that human intentions do not have the final word over our lives. In Genesis 50 verse 20, a powerful declaration echoes from a moment in history when betrayal itself was transformed into destiny. What others meant for evil, the Most High turned for good. Those words were not spoken lightly. They were spoken after a long journey of misunderstanding, false accusation, and hidden manipulation. Yet in the end, the very circumstances designed to destroy someone's future became the pathway that elevated it. This is the pattern of divine reversal. What begins as an attack often becomes the evidence that reveals who truly stands in integrity. The same actions that were intended to silence you are now creating the conditions for your voice to be heard more clearly than before. The same obstacles that once slowed your progress are becoming the moments people remember when they realize the truth about what happened. And there is another truth that follows closely behind this process. Psalm 34 verse 21 carries a warning that echoes through time: evil will eventually destroy the one who practices it. The trouble that someone releases into the world does not disappear. It moves in circles, quietly returning toward its origin. This is why those who rely on deception eventually find themselves surrounded by the very consequences they once tried to assign to someone else. Right now, the weight of that principle is beginning to move. The hidden structure supporting the false narrative is weakening. The person who once felt confident in their control over the situation is beginning to notice that control slipping away. The same whispers they once used to shape opinion now begin to sound uncertain. People who once listened without question now start asking for clarity. And in the quiet moments when they thought no one was paying attention, the truth has already begun moving closer to the surface. You may not see the full picture yet, but the direction of the story has already changed. What was designed as your downfall is slowly becoming your promotion. Not because you forced the situation, not because you fought every accusation, but because you allowed time and truth to work together. Your restraint, your patience, and your refusal to respond with the same tactics used against you have created space for something greater to unfold. And as this reversal continues, something remarkable will happen. The very evidence that once seemed hidden will begin to appear in unexpected places. A conversation will reveal more than it intended. A detail will surface that shifts the entire understanding of what took place. Someone who once believed the wrong version of events will suddenly recognize the difference between appearance and reality. This is how the light begins to return. Not always with sudden drama, but with clarity that grows stronger with each passing moment. And when clarity reaches its full strength, the story that once seemed buried will stand openly in front of everyone who once doubted it. The process has already begun. The movement behind the scenes is already underway. And the moment is approaching when what was hidden will no longer remain in the shadows. Because very soon, the truth that has been quietly rising will step fully into the light. My beloved soul, the moment you have been unknowingly approaching is closer than you realize. For a long time the situation surrounding your life felt unfinished, like a story paused in the middle of a sentence. Questions lingered without answers. Accusations floated in the air without resolution. And the silence that followed made it appear as though the matter had simply faded away. But in the unseen realm, nothing was forgotten. What seemed quiet on the surface was actually a preparation taking place in a place far beyond human judgment. Imagine, for a moment, a vast courtroom not built by human hands. No noise of argument fills that place, no confusion clouds the truth. In this court there are no rumors, no manipulation, no distorted versions of events. Only records. Perfect, undeniable records. Every word spoken in secret. Every intention hidden behind polite smiles. Every decision that shaped the path of your story has been preserved there with complete clarity. And now something remarkable is beginning to happen inside that unseen court. A door is opening. Not a physical door made of wood or iron, but a symbolic doorway connected to justice itself. For a long time that door remained closed, not because heaven ignored your situation, but because the timing of justice requires precision. When that door opens, the truth does not emerge halfway. It emerges fully. Every hidden thread of the story becomes visible. Every misplaced accusation finds its proper context. And every attempt to distort reality loses the protection of secrecy. You may remember the moments when you almost tried to defend yourself publicly. Perhaps you considered explaining everything, gathering proof, or confronting the situation directly. There were times when the pressure to speak felt overwhelming. Yet somehow you were restrained. Something held you back from stepping into the conflict the way others expected you to. What you did not know at the time is that your restraint allowed something far greater to develop. Because the verdict you were waiting for was never meant to come from human opinion alone. Long ago a declaration was written that reveals where true justice ultimately comes from. In Deuteronomy 32 verse 35, a powerful statement echoes through time: vengeance belongs to the Lord, and repayment will come in its proper moment. This does not mean anger or revenge in the human sense. It means that the responsibility for correcting hidden injustice does not rest on your shoulders. The authority to bring balance belongs to the one who sees everything without distortion. And there is another truth closely connected to this promise. Psalm 37 verse 28 reminds us that the Lord loves justice. Not tolerates it. Not occasionally notices it. Loves it. Justice is not an afterthought in the divine order, it is part of its foundation. Which means that the moment a hidden injustice enters the story of someone who walks with integrity, the unseen realm does not ignore it. It simply waits for the moment when the truth can be revealed in a way that cannot be denied. That moment is now approaching. Inside the unseen court, the records are already complete. The timeline is already understood. The actions of every person involved are already known in their full context. And as the door of justice begins to open, those records move from silence toward acknowledgement. What once existed only as hidden evidence begins to find its way into visible reality. You may begin noticing the effects of this process in ways that feel almost surprising. Someone who once believed the wrong narrative suddenly begins asking different questions. A person who once stood confidently on the side of the misunderstanding starts reconsidering what they heard. Situations that once seemed firmly closed begin to reopen, as if an unseen hand has shifted their direction. This is not coincidence. It is the unfolding of the verdict that has been quietly prepared. And here is the wisdom you must carry during this moment: remain calm. Do not rush to prove yourself. Do not allow bitterness to enter your spirit. The same patience that carried you through the earlier confusion will carry you through this moment of unfolding justice. You do not need to chase vindication. You do not need to seek revenge. The story is already moving toward its own correction. Sometimes the greatest strength a person can demonstrate is the willingness to step aside while truth does its work. Because when heaven decides to bring clarity, the result speaks louder than any defense you could have prepared. The truth reveals itself in ways that even those who resisted it can no longer ignore. The same silence that once surrounded your name becomes the space where your integrity begins to stand clearly on its own. This is why the door of justice opening now matters so deeply. It means the story is no longer hidden inside private conversations. It means the truth is no longer trapped beneath layers of misunderstanding. It means the unseen verdict is beginning to move into visible reality. And when that process reaches its final moment, the people who once believed the wrong version of events will begin to see the entire picture differently. Because the final moment of exposure is much closer than you think. My beloved soul, the moment that once felt distant has finally arrived. The story that lived quietly in the shadows is stepping into the open. For a long time the truth about your situation seemed buried beneath assumptions, whispers, and carefully shaped narratives. People formed opinions without seeing the full picture. Decisions were made based on fragments instead of facts. And in the middle of that storm, you carried a weight that few people truly understood. But the time of hidden things is ending. What remained unseen is now beginning to surface where everyone can witness it. You may notice it first in subtle ways. A conversation that suddenly changes direction. A person who once doubted you beginning to reconsider what they heard. Someone quietly realizing that the version of events they accepted does not match the reality unfolding before them. The truth has a unique power when it finally rises to the surface. It does not need to shout. It simply stands in the light, and the difference between truth and deception becomes impossible to ignore. This is the moment when the hidden plot loses its power. The same narrative that once moved confidently through private conversations begins to collapse under the weight of reality. Details that once seemed harmless now reveal deeper intentions. Patterns that once looked like coincidence begin to look like design. Slowly, the pieces come together until even those who once believed the wrong story can no longer deny what truly happened. And here is the remarkable part of this moment. The situation that once wounded you is now becoming the doorway that advances you. Everything that happened, every delay, every misunderstanding, every silent struggle you endured is now part of a larger transformation. What once looked like loss is turning into clarity. What once felt like rejection is becoming the evidence that reveals your integrity. The very experience that tried to hold you back is now the reason others begin to recognize your strength and character. This is why ancient wisdom reminds us that seasons of hardship are never the final chapter for those who remain faithful. In 1 Peter 5 verse 10, we are reminded that after a season of suffering, restoration arrives. Not partial repair, not temporary relief, but true restoration that strengthens and establishes a person in ways they could not have imagined before the struggle began. What felt like a long and confusing chapter was actually preparing the ground for something greater. There is also another promise that echoes through this moment of transformation. Isaiah 61 verse 7 declares that instead of shame, a double portion of honor can appear. The very places where someone once experienced humiliation or misunderstanding become the places where dignity is restored. This is the quiet miracle of divine reversal. What once seemed like damage becomes the evidence of resilience. What once appeared to weaken you becomes the foundation of your credibility. As the truth becomes clearer, something else begins to shift around your life. The atmosphere that once felt heavy begins to open. People who once hesitated to support you now recognize the sincerity they overlooked. Opportunities that once seemed closed begin to appear again, but this time they arrive with a deeper understanding of who you truly are. The same situation that once slowed your progress now becomes the reason others trust your voice more than before. This is the moment when destiny quietly activates. Not with loud celebration, not with sudden applause, but with a steady movement toward the future that was always waiting for you. The door that tried to close your path has turned into the doorway that advances it. The struggle that once tested your patience has strengthened your character. And the truth that once seemed delayed is now clearing the space for the next chapter of your journey. Honor returns where misunderstanding once lived. Respect rises where doubt once stood. Clarity replaces the confusion that once surrounded your name. You did not have to destroy anyone to reach this moment. You did not have to become bitter or vengeful. The truth itself has done the work. And as the truth settles into the minds of those who once misunderstood the situation, the balance of the story is restored. Now a different door begins to appear in front of you. This door is not connected to the conflict that once defined your story. It is connected to the future that was waiting beyond it. The lessons you gain through this experience now shape how you walk forward. Your discernment is sharper. Your patience is stronger. Your understanding of people and purpose is clearer than before. This is how restoration completes its work. The past no longer controls your direction. The pain no longer defines your identity. And the struggle that once tried to silence your progress becomes the testimony that strengthens your path. The door of justice has opened. The truth has stepped into the light. Your honor is being restored. Your destiny is moving forward. Justice has spoken.